about, I've been mentioning this on my Saturday calls, this concept of the importance of writing a book. And um, this basically the step by step of how you need to launch really is you need to build an MVP, which is a basic feature, right? It could be a service. I always say you should have an upsell or a high ticket product right away. Three, you want to build um, a landing page. You want to go to market with some marketing, and then you want to build your brand, scale, and then six, you can run ads if things are going really well, right? And I've talked about this before, but I think some of you guys are new, is that the best way, in my opinion, to launch your company, whatever, it could be a service offering, it could be a software, it could be an app, it could be an e-commerce store, physical product, an invention, a course, whatever, doesn't really matter. Um, what you want to do is nowadays, a lot of people don't trust pretty much anyone. So that's why you have testimonial videos or a proof section or testimonials cards or your Trustpilot reviews or that sort of thing. But another way to get a lot of free marketing is to you've heard of like other people's money, right? Well, you can do other people's audiences, okay? Other other people's audiences. And so what do you think is the best way to get on to arbitrage essentially other people's audiences? So there's all these influencers in the world at various channels, and they have a big problem. I've explained this before, but their big problem is that, and if you've ever tried to do like a daily newsletter or anything like that, or try to post every single day, it's exciting for 2 weeks, and then eventually you run out of things to talk about. And so they have a problem of content. And the best way, therefore, for them to get content without having to come up with something new every single time is to what? What do you guys think? Nuno, you want to know something interesting, Nuno? I'm in Madrid, so it's the same time. It's 1 a.m. my time. I'm here with you guys. Um, so what do you guys think? How do you arbitrage other people's attention? Yeah, podcasts. Yeah, yeah. So, so podcast, YouTube, that sort of thing, right? YouTube channels, live on TikTok, Instagram. And the best way to do that, honestly, is to write a book. Yeah, exactly. So just imagine you have a podcast and I say, hey, I just came up with this software, or hey, I have this business. Okay, cool. That is a differentiator that makes you slightly different than other people. But there's a lot of people that own a business, but not a lot of people have written a book. Okay. And definitely not a lot of people have become a number one bestseller. And there's a badge, if you do it the right way with Amazon, you can be a bestseller. You only have to sell between 20 and 50 books on your launch date. You can do it. You have to do it systematically in the right way, but you can become a bestseller. And so now when you're reaching out to a lot of these channels. You say, "Hey, I'm Jonathan. I'm a number one Amazon bestseller. My new book about da 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 just came out. I also own a software app service company named blah blah blah, which helps people blah blah blah. I think your audience would really appreciate uh, learning about XYZ." So it's like three sentences, okay? And if you send that out to 100, 200, 300 people, you'll probably get booked 20 to 50 times. If you send out something that you're not leading with, I'm a bestseller or I'm an author, you might only get booked maybe, 2 to 5 times, some small podcast. So what ends up happening, let's think about this. If you get booked 20 to 50 times and the average viewership or listenership is like 2,000 people, you watch a YouTube video and it has 2,000 watches and you think that's not very many because you're thinking Mr. Beast or the top 1% of the top 1% of the top 1% take up The Pareto principle is very strong. And so you're misguided in thinking that everyone gets a million views when in fact it's like basically no one. But 2,000 people, if you've ever been in a room with 2,000 people, it's crazy. It's a lot of people. It's like it's more people than you can even see. Like you can't even match their eyes and their faces. It's too many people. I've spoken uh, on a lot of stages, and even really over 100, it starts to get kind of a blur, basically. And so I wanted to talk about how Famous is really good at building these kind of landing pages as well. And I'll use my own software a little bit as well. So um, if this is anything, hopefully this is kind of interesting. It's kind of an obscure lesson, but it really does help you in your brand. And also, one thing that's interesting, me and Alex were talking about this like a month ago, is that now you can test and launch a new product. Let's not say if it's the idea of it, for sure you can test and launch something every week to have something that's robust and people can actually log in and it works and it's, sort of how you want it. Maybe once every month, every 2 months, but even every once every 2 months, that means you can test six different products or six different services, six different softwares every year. And Naval Ravikant always says this. He says you only have to be right one time, which is why he actually recommends not taking advice from people that made money in a particular era and aren't in the arena right now. So a lot of investors, for example, they may have made their money because they sold their company 6 or 7 years ago. That's great. There's some soft skills that matter. Leadership, hiring, firing, setting the vision, discipline, how good you are with decision making with your money, all that kind of stuff, right? So there are sales. There's soft skills that are applicable across um, all different industries and all times. But the hard skills, meaning like how you do meta advertising or how do you do social media or how you do events or how you build softwares or how you do upsells or what software stack you're going to use for whatever you're building, or even how you do hiring technically, right? You can test people a lot faster now. All of these kind of things have changed so fast that you got to be mindful of kind of who you're taking advice from. If someone did something 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, take their advice on soft skills, but maybe not hard skills. Okay. And so the idea is that the people that you're gonna because the top level people can iterate and create new products so quickly, especially if they have developer teams or they have marketing teams, which a lot of big companies have. The competition is getting very fierce at the top. Okay, and because of that, there's a lot of things that are being proliferated newly all the time, and because of that, people don't trust people. Basically, I'm kind of the same way. I'm sure you're the same way. The first little influencer updates, it's like, oh yeah, amazing, I'll buy whatever you say. And now I'm like, yeah, but it's a brand deal and they're being paid for it. And this company probably just started 3 days ago and I don't trust their testimonials. Maybe they're fake. There's a lot of distrust. And it's going to get even more and more extreme when people can start launch companies and turn them off if they don't work at the, on in a weekend or in a month. So we were talking, anyways, this is a long explanation. If you don't, my vibe is I'm very philosophical if you guys haven't figured that out. I like to explain the why behind everything so that you can learn to fish. And me and Alex were talking about this the other day, and that's actually why we wrote a book for Alex, and we came out with a book for Alex, and I have multiple books. And he said, at the end of the day, the brand of the entrepreneur is the thing that's going to matter. So you think about a lot of big influences, a lot of big celebrities nowadays. You notice the pattern here. They don't really do commercials like for other companies anymore. Have you noticed that? What they do is they get equity in their own company. Like the first person, who is the first person to really do this? Is kind of funny. It's an athlete. I'll give you a trick. The first like billionaire athlete, and he stopped doing advertising for another company and started his own company. You guys, you guys connect the dots there. It's like one of the most famous athletes that's ever lived. Yeah, Michael Jordan, exactly. So Michael Jordan, when he said, I'm not talking about Nike anymore. He has the Jordan brand. Even my alma mater, the University of Michigan, um, they're sponsored by Jordan. They're not sponsored by Nike. Now, Jordan is a subsidiary of Nike, but they're equity partners. So Nike and Michael Jordan own together the Michael Jordan brand. Does that make sense? Roger Federer recently just did this. He stopped working with Nike, and he's made $1 billion. And the Kardashians and The Rock, and there's a lot of people that now are coming out with their own alcoholic drinks and that sort of thing, right? This is how you make the real money is you own. You're an owner. You're not just a talking head for some other company. Does that make sense? So the point is that owning your own brand as an owner um, is important, and it's more and more and more important than it's ever been. It's kind of funny. I have cross-pollination between my companies. Like I have some people that will come into my company because they need help with like capital raising. They're like building a startup and they want to raise $500,000 for their company, and we'll help them do that. And then they're like, yeah, but now I need a book. And then I switch over to my book writing company and we help them write a book. They say, oh, now I want to build a software. And then we kind of, so there's a lot of cross-pollination. And what's the difference? What's the thing that what's the common factor between, my staffing agency, my capital raising company, my software development company, and my book writing company, right? Those are like my four major companies. What do they all have in common? Does that make sense? What do they all have in common? Yeah. Me. I'm the common factor. So that's, I think, something that you guys need to think about as entrepreneurs for the next, 10 years at least, is how are you going to differentiate yourself? Um, and yes, you're building products, you're building software, you're building services, you're building things. Maybe you built something on Deal, maybe you're building something on Famous, maybe you're going to build something with everything that's happening. I mean, Alex is a mad scientist. He's always coming up with something new. Alex is uh, you're always on the cutting edge. And so being in Alex's wake, if you will, is he's one of the best entrepreneurs of our generation, to be honest. He's constantly coming out with really new and exciting things. And so there are people like that. And I think being like them is think of Elon Musk, right? Think of even Jeff Bezos, right? Like what is Deep Blue have to do with Amazon, has to do with Whole Foods, has to do with the Wall Street Journal. Like they're not really the thing that they all have in common is Jeff Bezos, right? Uh, does that make sense? Um, so I know this is a big setup, but I'll explain kind of how to do a quick book funnel. Basically, what you want to do with a book funnel is you want to have your book here. Uh, this is called the hero section. If you guys don't know this about me, I've way back when ClickFunnels was done, I mean, ClickFunnels is still a great software, but um, I built a funnel called MentorBox, which was um, it's like the second highest grossing ClickFunnels funnel ever. Um, it did like $30 million in sales. So it gets, most most companies after they scale past, millions or 10 million, they don't use ClickFunnels. They build their own software. They have their own custom thing. But so I built one of the highest grossing funnels ever uh, on ClickFunnels. So that's my why you should trust me um, thing here. So basically, you have a headline about the book, a subheadline of the book. You want to have your book cover right here. You have a little CTA, okay? You want to have a little testimonial grid, okay? Testimonials grid here. Uh, then you want to have a little VSL, okay? If you guys know what this is basically this is called a wireframe. I'll show you how to use ChatGPT to get famous prompts. Um, Pretty cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He just sold $100 million in books. It was the highest grossing nonfiction book in one day ever. There's only a couple fiction books that have ever beat him. Harry Potter is obviously higher than that, but oh, Carla, it was like Enterbox was like 2018 through 2022, something like that. We ran it for like 4 years. But I've obviously built a lot of funnels since then, but that's kind of one of my famous ones. And then you have what's called a benefits section. Okay. And I usually do bullet points. You guys know the difference between a benefit and a feature? I'll show you how to make a benefits. A little, oh, hang on. Benefits. And then you do the opposite. Do you guys know what a wireframe is? Have you ever seen a wireframe like this? This is basically the psychology of what the landing page should be, basically, right? Benefits and features. Yeah, benefits are the results your features will bring. Yeah, another way to think about it is that the benefit is like the thing that you're actually buying. That's the result. Yeah, the result. Um, and the feature is the reason why it will actually get you the result. Does that make sense? It's almost like proof. Then I usually like to do a little table of contents. Okay, in the next section. And then I like to do a little meet the founder or meet the author. Okay. And then you can do a little sales letter. You guys basically heard like a VSL, a video sales letter, but this is like an actual sales letter. Sales letters are like kind of old school copywriting when it was really difficult to build websites. So they actually started with newspapers where there's something called like a native article where people would write an article and then at the end it would be like, send in a check to this address and we'll send you this thing back. Could you imagine how good of a copywriter you'd have to be to do that? And then if you can, I like to have an audiobook, like a player that will play like the first chapter of the audiobook as a little test, right? Um, and then you can have a FAQ, and then you can have a little checkup at the bottom, okay? And then you always want to have upsells and that kind of thing, okay? CTA checkup. So this is generally the funnel that I like to do for book funnels, okay? Anyone have a book idea? I can also teach you guys how to outline a nonfiction book real quick. So nonfiction book is always uh, first chapter is pitching, reading the rest of the book. Second chapter is the main thesis, the big idea. Third chapter is beginning of part one. And then that goes for a couple chapters. Then eventually you have, let's say, sixth chapter, part two, 10th, part three, 16th. That's basically it. Okay, this is how most nonfiction books are written. And then you have each chapter has a opening story book, then the lesson of the story, then the nuts and bolts, basically the how to, and additional stories. And then I know you're thinking, which is like answering objections. And then cliffhanger to next chapter. Okay, so this is like the chapter, um, how most of the big nonfiction books of the world, every chapter kind of has this similar. Does that make sense? Uh, is using someone else's book worthwhile? Kenneth, I mean, it's so easy to write a book nowadays. You might as well write your own. The barriers to entry are much lower. So the hard part really here is, the lesson. You could basically write the book in like 16 sentences, right? So think of, let's say you have 16 chapters. What is summarize every chapter into one lesson? You know, leadership starts with yourself. Okay, cool. That's the first step. Um, when you're hiring, don't care about resumes. Okay, that's chapter two, right? So there's like, one big lesson that you're going to try to teach in every chapter. Okay. And the hard part is choosing a story that's either from your life or from history or something that's interesting, or you can make one up. Um, that the end of the story, it's very engaging, it's interesting. That's a whole other lesson on how to make an interesting story. But let's say it's interesting, engaging. There's things there's mysteries that are open that there's got to be a big question in the first paragraph or two. And I'm like, oh, how's this going to work? And then there's some climax of the story, and then there's a lesson. And the lesson happens to be the thesis of that chapter. Okay. And then the rest of the chapter is basically just switching into the nonfiction, where you're actually saying, therefore, if you're a mom and you're trying to parent your kid, you should blah, 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 blah. If you are an entrepreneur and you're trying to implement AI, you should blah, 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 blah. If you are, if you're a vegan and you're trying to lose weight, you should da, 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 whatever the thing is, right? The book can be about anything. Um, but whatever your lesson is, there's going to be some how to. Okay. And then you have a couple mini additional stories just so that people don't think that the first story was an anecdote, that there's actually you could have a scientific study or some research or another case study. And then there's going to be people that always have a doubt and they're going to say, yeah, I know you say with leadership, you should always be honest, but that's not always true because sometimes people blah, 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 and so there's an objection that people have in their brain, right? And whatever that objection is, that's where you say, hey, listen, and I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, yeah, but in my case, it's not true because of blah, 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 blah. And then you have to hit that head on, either with your own prose or you tell another story. Okay. And then you say, well, listen, I know we just talked about how to hire people from the Philippines, which is great, but you know, the next question is, you know, can you hire someone from the Philippines for anything, or are there particular jobs that they're better at? And then it's like, well, we'll get into that in the next chapter, and then you go to the next chapter. Does that make sense? So there's always this like throwing to the next lily pad. Okay. So I know you probably feel like you're um, uh, okay, Chuck, let's come up with a book. I'm gonna go to ChatGPT. Uh, hey, I want to come up with a book outline and funnel. The author is Chuck Voice. We don't have a name. It's about give me 16 chapters really quick. Okay, so this is cool. We can do this in my software, by the way. Um, my my software book daddy. So we have an outline wizard. I don't know if you guys have seen. I own this software, so we could go to the outline wizard, and we can use it to get chapter by chapter. It's kind of already trained in the method that I use. But just I know not everyone has access to this, so I'm not gonna. If you want to use Book Daddy, that's great. You should sign up for it. It's much more robust, but I know a lot of you guys just use ChatGPT, so I'll just use it. Uh, that's fine. Okay, great. Let's make a prompt for Famous.ai to create a book file for this book. Um, use this wireframe and write out the exact copy. Section apply section, be detailed. So Famous will create a beautiful landing page of this book file. So I just, gave it a little screenshot of my wireframe. What was the book called? Big Business Thinking, Small Budget. Okay. I'm actually going to use my own software for the book cover. Sure. It's I don't have any design suggestions. I'm just gonna let it go. You can see we've, yeah, no problem, Stefan. So I'm gonna create a book cover here. The book title should be, no, hang on. What did we say the title was? I like that. That's good. Um, yeah, it's, you have to go into an editing app. And unfortunately, it's just AI is not quite there. The reason why AI is not quite there, by the way, with the visuals, is that it's not actually writing. So I've explained this in a previous lesson, but basically the way that AI does images is it does it pixel by pixel. Okay. And it's just like it does with writing. Okay. This is hopefully will kind of explain what's happening. Is so what this is why AI is not actually thinking. It's starting to think more, but it's not still not very good at thinking. So what it does is it predicts based on let's say this word or this pixel what it should do next. Okay. And so it'll say, oh, based on this, I should do this, and then 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 I should do this. But imagine if you have, which is true, it has only have so much memory, right? So if you have all these million pixels here, okay, and you are doing a letter or like words, okay, I know, hear me out. So let's imagine all of these are pixels on images, and you're trying to do like the letter I is here, okay? Well, this is pretty crazy for this pixel here to remember all of these pixels previously that this pixel is attached to this pixel with the letter I. And so it ends up messing it up. That's just the reason. That's the reason why it's doing that. That's not bad. Let's do this one. Mm, we can do a million of these. If I gave it a instruction, it would be better, but this isn't bad. Uh, okay. Okay. Oh, give exact copywriting, including the 16 chapters. Famous has no context for this previous chat you've done to tell him everything. Okay, so this will be a nice little landing page, I'm sure. Okay, so now we're gonna go to Famous. We'll make a website. We'll pump this in, and then I've attached the book cover, match the branding. Add an image, add the book cover. Okay, and we'll let it go to town. So these super crazy prompts uh, work if they're organized. And so the way that you organize it is the way that you think about really anything that you're building is you want to think about it in terms of the goal, right? So like what is the goal of this? The goal is for someone to buy the book. Okay, so we need a website. Well, what are we pitching? Well, in the beginning, we're going to say, hey, are you an entrepreneur? Blah, 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 blah. You call out the avatar. This is your problem. You can solve the problem by doing what? Call to action, buy this book. Okay. Then they're thinking, well, I don't really trust you. So that's why you have testimonials. And then they say, oh, well, I still don't trust you. What is this book about? Okay, let me explain the book. Uh, why should I care? Here's the benefits. Yeah, but does it really work? Yeah, here's the features. Okay, what's in the book? Here's the table of contents. Should I care about the author? Yes, I should. Oh, look, there's an audiobook. I might buy something else. Answer the objections head on. CTA. So it's actually you're actually doing the psychology of the sale you're doing at scale through the sales funnel. Does that make sense? And so once you have that, then you can apply it to whatever business, whatever product, whatever service you have to whatever avatar. And in this case, our avatar happens to be, small businesses, I guess, um, that are on a budget, but they want to get the same bigness of enterprise clients. So very cool. You can do this for fiction. You can do this for nonfiction. You can do all sorts of things. So Famous is kind of doing his thing in the background. Write a 100-word BSL for this book. Um, have you guys used uh, Deal's uh, personality thing? It's kind of crazy. I'm gonna make a little VSL here. AI spokesperson. So I'll make a little VSL and I'll upload it so that we actually have like the whole thing. Yeah, this app is really good. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Dan Kennedy. I mean, I don't know if he owns it, but he owns his intellectual property. Um, continue to voiceover. Let's make it a girl who's pitching it.
Our distrust is very.
Mm,
Ideas are the.
yeah, I always like Matilda. Matilda's my favorite. Let me go back to these questions. Landscape, generate avatar, middle-aged woman, likes books. Frenchie, guideline on the number of chapters and pages. Oh, that's a little older. Middle-aged. That might work though. Um, so nonfiction books, like pop nonfiction books, are like usually 16 to 20. Fiction, it's um, fiction, you can never predict fiction. Some of the best fiction books ever are like um, 90 pages, of Mice and Men or something. It's like 100 pages. Um, and then you have, I'm just going to generate it. It's taking too long. Um, I'll generate this and then I'll make a little AI BSL. And yeah, and then you have like War and Peace, so anyone that tells you anything about what the length of a fiction book should be, just don't listen to them. There's too many examples of everything. But nonfiction, generally speaking, if it's like a big history book, or a big biography, it's going to be long. It's going to be like over 400 pages. Um, if it's kind of like self-development, kind of pop business, they're usually shorter. They're usually between like 200 and 300 pages and 16 to 20 chapters, and they're usually a larger font. Um, Stefan, here's the wireframe if you guys want to see it. This is kind of just a standard wireframe that I use. If you guys want to screenshot this. Joanna, trust is dead. Here's how to sell anyway. The subject line, don't take anything email like yesterday. He is interesting. Trust is dead. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he's a good copywriter. This is like being very like confrontational. This is a lot of people teach this on social media where like for example, let's say I wanted to sell a book, or like I wanted to sell my book daddy software. If I wanted to be confrontational, I'd be like, if you're not writing a book, your life is worthless or something, like something really confrontational. It would get a lot of engagement because it would get a lot of hate. It'd be like some people would be like, yeah, that's right. And then some people would be like, no, that's wrong. And then there'd be fighting in the comments and it would just, total chaos. And because it's total chaos, you get a much cheaper cost per click. Um, okay, let's see what Famous built. Famous is still building. Oh, not bad. Nice. Okay, cool. Let's add a header with logo left, uh, buy now button right. Um, also add a table of contents and make the author link in the header. Then create a footer with a terms and conditions and privacy policy and links to social media. Let's see where this is at. Still creating. You guys have any questions? I'm here. We're kind of just waiting for for the AI to kind of do its thing. You know what's interesting about writing books? For Book Daddy, we have private clients where we write their books with them. Not for them, but we kind of help them. And we've had like 60 number one bestsellers this year. Literally every single person that we worked with has been a number one bestseller because we have a process that we're obviously really good at it. And it's so crazy whenever I talk to the authors after they write their books, they're like, yeah, it's really good for like I said, for branding, going on a podcast tour, for selling your products and services. And obviously, if you want to be an author or like be a coach or be a speaker or something like that, you pretty much can't do it without having a book because a book is a codification of your thesis or your theory or your idea, right? So you think of like, what's the number one best-selling nonfiction book in the world right now? It's Mel Robbins, right? And the book is called Let Them, and you can kind of already know the thesis of that book. Like you already know what the book is about. Like Let Them. Like what do you guys think the book Let Them is about? Has anyone read it? Yeah, ignore the noise, basically. Yeah. It's like, okay, so a bunch of people are going to talk, and there's some people from your high school, and blah, 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 blah. And who cares? Just let them. Let them do whatever. You do you, basically. It's a it's a pretty, old idea. Uh, oh, the book is floating. That's funny. That actually might ironically do well as an ad because it's like it looks like she's like in the what was that old show where she would like move her the witch should move her move her nose and like she was I think it was from the 50s. Bewitched, yeah, exactly, Bewitched. It kind of looks like Bewitched. Like the it's floating. I didn't even look at it. Anyways, you can do this. You can do another version of this later, but the idea is still kind of interesting. So yeah, so Let Them is you kind of know what the book is about, or like Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willink, like you know what that book is about. Or like all of Ryan Holiday's books, like pretty much the entire books are in the title, right? Like the obstacle is the way, stillness is key, ego is the enemy. Um, like that's what the books are about. Or The One Thing by Gary Keller, right? It's like, it's about um, discipline and decision making. That makes sense. So uh, that's but so Kennedy says that pain method solution is not the way for sales anymore, and we need to change the approach if we want to stay winners. Yeah, so I mean, there's no one right way to do it, anyways. I mean, I would argue like pain, yeah, it's kind of cheesy nowadays. Well, so historically, copywriting and sales, you want to emphasize, you want to increase the pain, you want to increase the urgency, right? So you want to say something like, Uh, yeah, okay, it's not that big of a deal right now, but what will happen if you continue down this road for the next 10 years? What'll that do to your children? And you're like, oh damn, like now all of a sudden this seemingly small decision that I could have just put off is now this massive thing. And because now the consequences of my action extrapolated out over the course of 5 or 10 years, you're like, damn, yeah, you're right. I do need to make a change, right? Um, so that's how you increase pain in copywriting and sales is you really increase it with time. You draw time out linearly. Um, so you do need to emphasize the problem, I would argue, right? Because otherwise, like if I don't have the problem, I'm not, if I'm not problem aware, I'm not interested, I'm not clicking, Uh, but this kind of cheesy way of like, the pain, yeah, I do agree. It's probably not quite there. And then the idea of method, like some people call this in copywriting, like your unique mechanism. Does that make sense? Um, Yeah, okay, cool. So we have a little bit of a funnel here. We have, get the book today. This should be a testimonials grid, but it's okay. We got a little VSL, kind of pitches the book.
Most small businesses try to copy the playbook of big companies and fail. Why? Because you don't have enterprise budgets.
Yeah, that's a good opening hook. Um, inside the book, what you'll gain, chapter breakdown, chapter by chapter, meet the author. This is a professional, nice photo. Get your copy today. Okay, so there's more to be done here. I think the FAQ should be okay. So let me switch this. But here's a really advanced step. What are you uh, naming the sections? So this, I always do this. I know some of you guys might be kind of frustrated by this, but I'll ask Famous to tell me the names of the different sections in the wireframe. Right? So think about this. This is usually the hero section, testimonials, VSL, benefits, features, table of contents, um, meet the team, meet the author, whatever, meet the company, FAQ, and then CTA. But it didn't do them in the correct order, have you noticed? So now I'm going to ask it to rename everything. Okay. So you see, look at this. This is actually really important, guys. This is kind of advanced. Okay. Um, I'm going to ask it. So you see how I got it? I knew, and now I know how it's naming it. Okay. Let's reorder the sections as follows. Okay. So now I'm going to go in here. Social proof features, expanded features, table of contents, author. Hang on. Oh, it did do it. It just did it. It just didn't do it long enough. Okay, okay, okay. I'm gonna put the so I'm gonna move the meet the author down to the bottom. So you see how, so now when you're referring to anything that you're changing, now you know the names of each individual section. So you say, oh, I want to change the image in the offer stack. I want to change the image in the meet the author. I want to change the copywriting and the headline of the table of contents, right? So you're using the exact language that Famous has named everything. This makes sense. So, anyways, what I was saying was a lot of people. It's funny because they write their books and then they say that it's like one of the most meaningful things they've ever done in their life. It's kind of cool because it's so true. Like I have a lot of books in my library that I've written, and they're like one of the proudest things I have, and more than my businesses or it's like I have there's this artifact, and very few people do it, and it forces you to codify your ideas or your story. It's one thing to have it in your brain. It's another thing that you can pass it down to, your grandkids or, have it in your family for a long time. Uh, Alan Watts, he's a kind of a famous Buddhist guy that brought over Buddhism to the Western world. I'm not Buddhist, but he's a smart guy. Um, Testimonials section should be social proof. It should be a grid of testimonials with avatar images, a grid of 6. Um, and sorry, I'm trying to give like a lecture and build this thing at the same time. But he said that there's really only 3 important moments of your life. Has anyone heard this? Alan Watts, smart guy. Um, he says there's 3 important moments in your life, and I'm gonna argue that there's 5, but he says that there's 3. He says that when you're the day you're born, the day you die, and the only middle one is your wedding day, which I find, which I found kind of interesting. Because it's like the decision to go from your old family to creating a new family and who you're going to spend your time with. So that was kind of cool. But which I think he's partially right. I think, who you're going to marry and where you're going to live is probably two of the most important decisions. But but there's a I would say if you're going to become an entrepreneur, I think that's also one of the most important decisions because it's being an employee and just the feeling of being an entrepreneur and not have anyone being responsible for paying you uh, is it's a very extreme feeling. Um, it's like there is no paycheck. Um, you have to make it happen. And then I also think if you write a book, I think that those are I'll never forget the day that I first came out with my first book. It was one of the best one of the best moments. Okay, so we have this, we have a little VSL. Um, Benefits section should be an image on the left and then bullets right. Cards. So I'm just kind of going through this. Is anyone interested in writing a book? I'm doing a little event um, on Saturday if you guys want to go. Like 2 hours. We'll just do like a little outline of your book and make a little funnel and write the first couple chapters if anyone wants to join. Does that sound interesting to anyone? I can send you guys a link. I'm doing it from my other company, Book Daddy, but sometimes people want to go. Um, yeah, it's this Saturday at 11. I can send you guys a Zoom link. Let me find. Yeah, okay, cool. So it's send a little. Okay, so we're getting close.